Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to the Finding Financial Fitness Show. I'm your host, Nino Gonzalez, joined again by my co-host, Chen, and another very close friend of the show, Lindsay Gittens. Lindsay, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Hi,
I,
Lindsay.
I have to just say before we got on, I'm not trying to embarrass you, Lindsay, but this girl got ready in like 3 minutes for our podcast. She was like, "Oh, this is gonna be on video. Hold on, let me just go and make my just
Yeah,
do my face really quick." I'm like, "All right, cool.
yeah, I
No biggie."
get the camera.
I'm like,
Yeah,
girl doesn't look like she's over 21. Anyways, welcome, Lindsay, to the show. We're super excited to have you for a variety of reasons. I think that the audience is going to get a lot of feedback and interest in kind of you and what you do. Let's just start off with, I'll kind of mention why I wanted to have you on, but let's just give us a little bit of background of who you are, what you do, what your story's been, and we'll go from there.
sure. Okay. So I'm from Boston. I'm 41 years old. I grew up in Boston, for the most part, Cambridge, which is like a little bit outside of Boston. I am an anesthesiologist. I work at one of the bigger medical centers in downtown Boston. I've been an anesthesiologist for, geez, almost 10 years. Sorry, 12 years. And I have two kids. I have a 4 and a 6-year-old boy and girl. They keep me very busy. I'm a single mother. I take care of everything financially for my family, for the kids, pay for everything for them. I own a two family, and my mother actually lives with me downstairs. So I very much am, financially responsible for my entire family and myself. And I came across this investment community kind of like serendipitously, I guess. I did a renovation on my two family that I live in currently, did a gut renovation, ended up taking a HELOC out on it without any real plans for it. I just was like, I'm just going to get a HELOC. I'm going to get as much as possible. So I did this in March of 2022, where I got the HELOC, and I had been listening to Bigger Pockets and thinking potentially I had a rental during this time as well. So I was renting out a condo that I had. And so I was listening to Bigger Pockets, and I don't know if you're familiar with like the Burr method. I'm sure you guys have heard of it. And basically, it was this idea that you use money, you buy a property, you renovate it, you refinance it, rent it, take the cash out, and then do it again. And so I was like, wow, it'd be really cool to be able to kind of like use the same dollar like over and over and over again while acquiring more properties. So I called Bigger Pockets, or sorry, I didn't call Bigger Pockets. They had Rent to Retirement. They're affiliated with Rent to Retirement. So I called Rent to Retirement, which has turnkey rentals. And I was like, I'm really interested in doing this investment strategy with real estate. I just kind of want to use the money over and over and over. And at the time, I was told, like, these are turnkeys, like, you don't have a lot of cash flow. There's not enough space to refinance this. And, it would take a long time to pay off your, the down payment, things like that, to be able to reuse your money. So that's not really what you can do here. So I waited like a month, and then I called again. I was like, maybe I can talk to someone different. Maybe someone will tell me something different. And I called again, said the same thing. And I was pretty much told the same answer. But then I was told, there's this investment community that is basically doing exactly what you're saying, kind of using lines of credit to make investments, and then kind of like using that money over and over again. And people are really killing it using this strategy. Like, you should get in contact with them. So that's what I did. And I did that in October of 2022. I came across this investment community, and it's been completely life changing. I obviously have met you guys, have built like a really strong community with it, and it's been amazing. So it's kind of my story and how I came here.
A couple things that stand out to me. First of all, 41, that's a damn lie. I still can't. I mean, for those of y'all who aren't on YouTube, you can see her on YouTube, but in person, this girl looks like she's 25. And then your kids are like the most adorable kids in the world. Every time I see you posting on social media, I'm like, when did I start following child models? I'm like, what is this? Like, your kids are adorable. I mean, just absolutely adorable. I just wanted to throw it out there because you have a beautiful family, and That's amazing. But
Mhm.
you can kind of see right there from just your little intro the eagerness and the willingness to learn more. We've talked on the show about the entrepreneurial bug, that desire for more. Even when you called the quote unquote experts and they were like, sorry, you're a little bit too advanced, then you still were persistent and you called them again. So again, you share a lot of similarities with us and with our investment community. So one of the things that I wanted to kind of discuss with you first and foremost was people oftentimes will say, okay, it's easy to get started. It's no challenge at all. But what happens when I make a lot of money? Or what if I'm a high income earner? What if I have a lot of money? And where I want to kind of pivot to now is the healthcare field and specifically physicians, because I feel like what you'll notice in the passive income, the stacking model, and pay, correct me if I'm wrong, but a lot of people that join this philosophy are people who don't make a lot of money in their jobs, be it teachers, be it your run of the mill, a cop, your average American worker. And they feel like, okay, my retirement isn't going to provide me with enough. I need to find alternative solutions. That I think is the general gist of people are desperate and they want to get out. They want something different. However, with doctors and physicians specifically, these high lawyers you can put there as well, these high income earners, oftentimes they don't necessarily look for these strategies because they make so much money. They figure, well, I can just throw it in my 401k or my IRA, then no problem. I'll make millions later on because I'm investing so much. So, from your perspective, why did what made you feel like the traditional, because I know how the healthcare world is, you get really good 401ks, you get that. What made you say that that's not, I guess, good enough? What made you have that desire for more or for something different?
Yeah. So I think I was thinking of how, the time commitment of my job. So anesthesia is actually one of the more lifestyle friendly fields as far as, you can work however much you want. Typically, if you're at a big like academic center like I am, and, for the most part, you can make your own schedule. But again, if like you want to make more money and of course, if you're making more money, then you have more expenses and you want to maintain a certain lifestyle, then like, yeah, you work. And especially if you're younger, you're working to build your retirement or things like that in the traditional sense. For me, it was really important to spend more time with my kids. And my goal has always been like, all right, I want to be able to take them to school, pick them up from school, and do whatever things on the weekend, whatever extracurricular activities they get into as they get older. I want to be able to be there for those things. And the only way I can do that is if I work less. But if I work less, then I'm going to make less money. So I still want to maintain this lifestyle. So it was kind of like looking at another source of income to really try to give me that time freedom. And that's been my like why I am doing all of this and why I went that route. And it ended up just turning out so much better than I even anticipated and a lot sooner than I anticipated. But you're right. I mean, physicians in general, and I'm like I said, I'm in anesthesia. I work with anesthesiologists, surgeons. We're very risk averse. And, and I think that comes naturally just because of our jobs. I mean, you have to be risk averse. And we're literally like taking care of people's lives, regardless of
Especially
people's lives,
anesthesiology.
literally. Yeah, like you pushed the wrong med and like, you know what I mean? And so it's like we're risk averse. It's just like by nature. And I think that certainly, you don't know if risk averse people go into medicine or it's vice versa, but
Mm.
regardless, that's just the feel that you have. And you are talking about people who make a lot of money and people who are very well educated. And so I think kind of like you said, the caveat of being well educated is really thinking you do know everything, that you're doing everything the right way. And I was by no means financially savvy whatsoever. I still don't even really consider myself financially savvy. I just like, but I knew nothing. I was just kind of like doing everything that everyone else was doing, just like saving my money, maxing out my 401k and just doing it over and over. And so I think it's a tough group to kind of hack into because everyone's kind of like, one, I know what I'm doing. This is how everyone's done it, and this is how it should be. And two, like I'm not willing to risk my money. So yeah, so I think that's why you don't see as many higher earning people doing that
I think
or
that's
doing
really
something.
interesting. You brought up the psychology of money in a sense that just by the default fact that physicians, you going to school and you pick this track, you're already self-selected group of people.
Yeah, that tends to
Right.
path.
Right. And then once you are successful and you become high income earners and you enjoy a certain stability of life and lifestyle, it is even harder to get kind of jump out of that normal track
Right.
and do something different. So you naturally, I feel like you're kind of a higher risk tolerance type personality. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I am. Yeah. And, mixed with like just open mindedness in general, like I'm very much like, I don't know everything. And I think it helped that I was not financially savvy because I feel like the ones that really are like really stuck in it. And they're just like, nope, this is the way you do it. And I think the fact that I didn't know much about it is what led me to be more open minded to other ways. Something else like personality wise that I think is important is, you know, again, because we work in these like high risk kind of jobs, people are neurotic. Like people are neurotic. People are controlling, like, you know, and there's just like an element of like control, of course, that you lose with investing. And, you have like your investment, and unless you're seeing literally like the bank account and like the money flowing in and out, like you don't know. There's a little bit of a black box with every single investment that you do. And so people like can't give up that control, and so being able to do that is important in this field for sure.
I'm
Yeah,
shocked that not more people do IBC, not more doctors do IBC then, because that's all about control. I'm just like,
but still, it's so alternative though. It's not
mm,
mainstream, right? And
yeah.
I think that's kind of the point that I was going to get to. Pei, can you actually share the story of what you were talking before we jumped on about how when you first kind of encountered Lindsay and the White Coat Investment Club and all that?
Yeah, I just remember, when Lindsay came on, she was just like a rocket, right? She was doing everything. She was talking about, and she was just really open-minded about kind of absorbing all the information and processing it her way and in her own, trying to fit everything in her what she's doing in her planning. But one of the things was Lindsay was so excited. She started sharing, what she's been learning with another group that she was, already involved in. And I remember she come back kind of just like feeling dejected that everything that she shared cut down, and she gets into like kind of like arguments with people about like, what she's learning. And
Yeah.
I think we all kind of went through that process of like, hey, what we're learning now is so different that you want to share, and then the others that are still set in their way kind of shoot down the idea. And it was just a funny story that
Yeah.
I remember.
Yeah, it elicits some very strong reactions for sure. It's very interesting. I mean, the thing that's so funny about it is like what we're doing is not like new or novel or anything like that. It's just different, but people have been doing it forever. I mean, high rich, super rich entrepreneurs, like this is what they do. This is how they get rich using other people's money to invest in things and assets and things like that. And so obviously our investment community just made it possible for more like laymen to do it. So it's interesting that it gets shot down so strongly because it's like, I'm not making this up. It's not like, and I didn't make this strategy up. It's been around.
Well, in time will
But
tell.
yes, that was, I have since, yeah, right. I have since like given up as far as like, but I was like on like a streak of like telling everybody I knew. Like I was just so excited about it. And I got a couple of people to like sign on, but no physicians though.
Right.
So,
And that's what I was
yeah.
getting at is it's probably you maybe get some of the nurses, again, going back to the regression to the mean of the average person who's doing this. I don't think our physicians, our doctors, our lawyers. You'll get the outliers like yourself, but the majority of people, I think they do it because they're searching for an alternative to get them out, which I think I find that to be interesting because one of the things that Pei and I have discussed is, okay, well, we do all this presumably to make more money, right? We were doing our investments to make more money, thinking that more money is going to solve our problems and therefore make us happier. However, if you then look at physicians in general, they make more money probably than most investors do from their investments, from their active income physicians do. So I'm curious from your experience and your discussions with physicians, do you think that because physicians make more money, do you think that they're happier than the average person, or would you say it's the opposite?
Hard to say, right? I mean, obviously there's that saying like, like money doesn't make you like happy, but it certainly makes things easier for you and allows you resources to, if you are unhappy, to make yourself happier. So, whether people take advantage of those resources and things like that. I mean, it's hard to say, right? I certainly know people that work like very hard and they're making a lot of money, but I don't know that they're seeing their family. I don't
Mm.
know, that they're always, doing things that they enjoy. So it's hard to make a blanket statement on that. But I think in our field to make more money, you have to work more.
Mm.
So specifically. So, you know, it's the trade-off.
It's just interesting to see because you would think that presumably, again, if money's going to solve your problems, well, then you turn to the people who are making more money. You would think that they would be happier, but that's not always the case.
Right. Of course. You're right. Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, everyone has all their stuff.
yeah, that's true. Well, I mean, there's something also that I think is important as you've been talking that I think talking on the importance of having active income. I know Pay's very big about this. Like Pay's discussed to me multiple times, but also on the show. Oftentimes, when people start learning about investments, we had Corey Zigman. Actually, she was with Rent to Retirement at one point.
Yeah.
She was the one that, yeah, exactly. So small world, but she was the one who mentioned the importance of keeping your active income because oftentimes, specifically in real estate, specifically in the Bird method, you get people who will do one flip, they'll do a burr, they'll make $10,000, $15,000, and they're like, "Oh my god, I'm a genius! If I just do this 10 times a year, I'm making over six figures. I don't need to go to work." And then they quit their job and then they start doing it, but then the market tanks or they fail at this home or whatever it might be. And I think if you can be an active, and this goes maybe for the young people, but if you want to be an active earner in the medical field and make decent money and don't have that lifestyle creep go up too high as your income goes up, if you can invest the rest of your money that you're saving basically into these strategies within 10 years, realistically, within 10 years, if you're living well below your means as a physician, you could really retire off of your investments in 10 years because you have this volume of money. Again, we just did her spreadsheet where we looked at the 20-year outlook. Well, those were with $10,000 stacks. If you just
Yeah.
imagine that with $100,000 stacks, again, add another zero to that, that timeline gets compressed so much. I mean, what are your thoughts, Bray? Do you think that there's truth to it?
Oh, absolutely. Like, I think the high income earners like Lindsay, yourself, and several others are in that, our community are, in that group. You can, and yourself, you can accelerate this plan. This plan is flexible and forgiving, but it's also
Yeah.
something that, if you're willing to put in more, you can truncate. It's someone names it a time machine. It really is, right? You can compress time.
Mm.
And if
Right.
you're like Lindsay, your motivation is not about money. Your motivation is spending time with your kids. And that is
Yeah.
something that money cannot buy itself, but having money certainly helps you buy back your time so that you can
Mhm.
do that. Like, I see all your
Yeah.
vacation pictures with the kiddos, and that's just, I wish I can go
Yeah.
back in time and do that, right? But
Yeah.
when you have young kids, that time you cannot. My kid is about to graduate from high school, so
Oh, I know. Yeah.
like, oh my gosh.
Fast. And I realize that. And so, yeah, I'm trying to hang out with them while they still like me, you know?
Absolutely. Before that,
But,
gosh.
So
right.
with all that knowledge that you have, what does retirement mean to you? Like, because you're setting yourself up so well, you're already living, it sounds like, a pretty balanced lifestyle where you get to choose how you spend your time. So does the thought of retirement ever enter your mind, or do you kind of see yourself doing this indefinitely?
So that's what's so interesting about this whole thing is because your goals kind of change, or at least mine did. When I first came across the community, I was told like, your financial freedom date based off of the things that you want to do is like 12 years out from now. And, and this was almost 3 years ago. And I was able to compact that to like 2 years because of all the things that I was doing. But then as you guys know, I got building a house and I'm doing all this other stuff. So a lot of things got delayed. But as I was learning more about the strategy, I became less and less concerned about my actual financial freedom date. I just saw how much more time freedom I was able to afford myself by being able to just cut back work and actually not change any of my whatsoever. And so being able and actually just do more, really. And so that like one move of fully understanding the strategy and being able to cut back work, I took a very big pay cut, cutting back work. I took $100,000 pay cut, which, normally with the just traditional method, you can't take $100,000 pay cut and still live the life that you're living with your expenses. And so it allowed me to do that and free up my time. And even just cutting back by 1 day a week has been so, freeing. And just not having to work as many calls, like things like that. I got to like give up my calls. I just don't need it. And so I don't even know at this point, I don't even know what my financial freedom date is. I'm just like doing this because I'm in a very like comfortable space and I will just figure it out as I go along. But yeah, I still see myself just because I have put in so much time and effort to be a doctor and be an anesthesiologist. And I actually do it, so I still see myself doing it for many years, even past, when I'm retired and free or whatever, but it'll just be in my control when I want to do it and how much.
That's
on your terms, living life on your terms. That's it.
Right. I think that's such a good, I do want to keep touching on that because I think that's a really good reframe the way you defined it, because I think that's a very common thing that people experience. And it's one of those unteachable moments, I think, because it's so easy for the three of us to tell somebody who's just starting out, hey, money's not going to solve your problems. And the retirement date or all this it's not as worked up as it's going to be. And from their perspective, it's like, yeah, easy for you to say because you're there. I think it's something that has to be learned. And just going on what Lindsay was mentioning, that financial freedom date, whatever that might be, it's basically take that as like a retirement definition of the point where you can stop working and your income from your investments is greater and sustainable enough that you can stop working and still have that income coming in to replace your current expenses. That's essentially all that means. It's the same thing as it's just putting a date, a number on when you can actually quote unquote retire. And I think initially we all get into this with that, okay, look, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. I thought the light was 40 years down the road, but now I realize the light is only 12 years down the road, or in Lindsay's case, 2 years. I'm like, if you keep seeing that light, it's like when you're running a marathon or you're running a race. If you see the finish line, you're going to push a little bit quicker because you're almost there. That's what Lindsay did. That's what I did. That's what Pei did, where you start seeing, you're like, well, I want to get there faster. But then you get there to that finish line and you're like, the race wasn't actually that bad. I didn't necessarily need to run that fast, but throughout me sprinting the last meter or the last 2 meters, I missed out on the beautiful lake that I just passed by or the beautiful ocean that I just ran. And I think that true freedom isn't necessarily sitting around at home doing nothing. True freedom is being able to do the things that you enjoy on your time. It's more focused on time freedom. So I care more about the time freedom date now. I don't care necessarily about the financial freedom, because if you don't solve those problems, meaning as you're getting closer to your retirement and you realize that thinking that that's going to solve all your problems, and then you quickly realize, oh crap, my problems are still there. Well, then that's kind of you're going to address it one moment or another. So I think you summed it up so well. And I really hope that people are listening and heard what Lindsay was saying, because it's something that Pei and I have mentioned time and time again. But hearing it from somebody who clearly has their why very, very defined, I think is super important. So thank you for sharing the way you did. So, Pei, did you have anything else you want to talk on the financial freedom definition? Because I do want to pivot a little bit because I'm curious.
No, I think you actually, this is the best explanation of that I've heard, because it's not a number or a date. It's about how much of that time that you are able to, regain control of. And that's kind of the big theme that, in our conversation today with Lindsay, that kind of a recurring theme, like that control of your time, control of your finances. Those are the two big things. And, deep down, that's all we want. It's not necessarily a date to sit by the ocean and drink Mai Tai, although that's nice. But
Nice.
not every day, right? Like we are still by nature, we want to be active. We want to be doing something. We want to be doing something meaningful. So no, that's really good one,
Yeah. Okay. So let's pivot because we'll come back, but I am curious because we talked about retirement. Well, we might be getting to a point, Lindsay, and I want your opinion on all this. It's completely left field, but we might getting to a point where we actually don't need anesthesiologists because we have AI. So I'm curious about. I'm just kidding. By the way, I am curious though. As being in the medical field, as entrenched as you are, where do you see the future of medicine in the U.S.? I know that's a very broad question, but I have my views on it. I'm just curious when it comes to AI and different, just the medical industry as a whole.
I unfortunately think, that we're not too far away from really just robots, whatever, being able to do everything. I mean, right now we do like robotic surgeries, where we're literally just like sitting. This is like the surgeon is like sitting in a console basically and like doing a surgery. So he's not at the patient, he's sitting in a console. I don't see why, a little bit time from now, you can do that from like home or like, I don't know. I mean, that's like exaggerating, but I don't know. It's hard to say. I mean, because you can't take out the like humanity part of medicine, and still have people be like satisfied. I think, I don't think it will be completely taken over, but I think we're going to be coming in like some interesting times, like over the next several years for sure.
Yeah. I always like asking medical professionals about that because it's such a, I don't say taboo topic, but it's something that I think the medical field is not wanting to talk about enough, despite the fact that it's here and it's happening, and it's how we adapt and how we utilize it is going to really affect how the longevity of the medical field and the durability, especially in the U.S., given that our healthcare system is so fractured in the way that it is. And I know Jackie's talked about potentially getting into the medical field, neurobiology, neuroscience. I mean, she's probably going to be learning about that in school with AI and learning how to utilize these new technologies to implement. And I think it really does fascinate me. And I was just curious. So thank you for humoring me on that.
Put her on the spot, right?
I really did. I was just I didn't tell her we were going to talk about that. But speaking of, obviously, Pei, you mentioned daughter going to school soon. What advice would you give to, let's say, maybe not college kids, but younger individuals who are maybe deciding on a profession? But like, this is the number one question that I get from people who are in the ages of 18 to 22 is, okay, I've learned about investments. I know I want to invest. I have no money to invest. So what should I do? Should I go to college, go to school, get a degree, and then start investing? Or should I start doing trade work now to make money? What are your just general advice for younger individuals, knowing what you know now, being that you are a high income earner and you're into passive income? What would you say?
So it's tricky. I mean, of course, I think of like what I'm going to tell my kids, right?
Exactly.
And what I want for my kids. What I want for my kids is, which, I'm certainly obviously going to be helping with this, but I want them to do what I'm doing, right? And I want to teach them that early, just so they can actually decide to do something that they truly love and want to do and not have to worry about how much money they're going to make, this and that, paying off loans, those types of things. But of course, like I will be there hopefully, to help kind of like kickstart that for them. And so they can just truly do whatever it is that like makes them happy and that they want to do without worrying about those things. So whether that be going to college or not, or, something else. I mean, it's so hard to know where we're going to be in that time. But for someone starting off right now, I would say it depends on what they want, right? If they want that freedom, they would have to learn some more like entrepreneurial skills, but it's hard, like if you don't have any money, right? It's like, where are they going to get it from? And like, where are they going to like source that from? So I feel like you do have to have some kind of base, right? With some kind of like active income, being able to like just the experience of managing your expenses, managing your income, finding out if you have cash flow, things like that. I think it's hard to just like start as an entrepreneur like at like 18 with like no money, So a part of me does feel like, you should still get that base and then kind of expand from there. But, it's like everyone's just coming from just different perspectives and backgrounds. So it's hard, again, hard to make like a blanket statement for it.
Sure.
And I think a lot of people just assume that, you being a doctor, that all the, your lifestyle comes from that. So it's hard. Like, for example, when would you start telling your own kids, about your investing? You're almost running a parallel track. You have your active income. That's what you do,
Right?
That's your professional identity. But you also have an investor identity, right?
Right.
That investor identity could be a very traditional invest your money in the 401k, just way accumulation identity. Or like you have a different identity than the typical, doctor or lawyer out there.
Right.
When will you start telling your kids about your superpowers?
Possible, as early as possible, as early as I feel like they can somewhat comprehend it, if that's early teens and like, I know you've certainly like talked to your daughter about it, so probably like early teens seems like a good time to get started when I feel like they can, comprehend a little bit, or at
I
least
want
a
to see their
surface
reaction.
level.
I want to see their reaction. What, Mom? You're not rich just because you're a doctor?
I know. Well, that's the thing. I'm like, I don't want them to think that just like, especially when I get to the point where I really don't have to work and I'm just kind of always around, but yet we have money and we have this like nice lifestyle. I don't want them to think it's just there, So of course, like teaching them how we got here, or how I got here, is like of utmost importance to me, so that they can do it themselves.
So interesting, because we had Winnie and Amasia on our last show. So give you context, Lindsay. The two of them are like teaching IBC to kids basically. Because Winnie taught Amasia, her daughter. I mean, Winnie's been doing this for about 15 years now, about IBC at a pretty young age. And I mean, I was like 9-10 years old. She was explaining to us. And Amasia didn't really pick it up until she was like 18, 19. But it was like years of like teaching that and explaining that. But yeah, it is because kids are sponges, right? They observe and they absorb information as well, right? And so if they'll see like, oh, we have a comfortable life, and my friends don't have this, and my friends don't have that. They start realizing, okay, well, mom's a physician, mom's a doctor. Maybe that's why, not knowing that there's all these foundation building that you've done over these last couple of years, learning everything to set them up. Because the difference between active and passive is you have to be active to earn it. If something were to happen to you, that goes away. Just that high income alone will fall off. So I think that's such a good point. And I think that also is an explanation when it comes to risk. I think you tell us, how would you rate your, I don't want to say investment strategy, but would you consider yourself to be more risk averse, more aggressive? How do you, I know the answer, which is why I'm laughing about this, but I want you to tell people.
I will like do anything. Yeah. I will. Like, tell me the right numbers and I'll do it. Like, you already know.
Have you always been that way?
Yes. So, I mean, I've certainly been someone who will like jump into things, not even fully, one, understanding it, and two, like seeing the long term, maybe consequences or whatever. I'm kind of very much like cross that bridge when we get there. And this like whole way of doing things, I did the same thing. Like, I jumped in. I was like, I don't fully understand this, but it seems really cool. And like, I'm just going to do it and see what happens. And like within a month, I was like, I got it. Like, I get it. I'm like, this is amazing. And so that's when I just like went like full force and just like literally everything, liquidated like everything, and like put it into investments.
Hey, what do you always say? And, like, jumping into the pool without checking if there's water?
Yep.
Right, literally us. Like, literally, that's me. But it's like, it's worked out for me so far. I mean, like, I have, if things like don't go right, like, it's not like my it's over. You know, I have at least that bit of sanity as
Sure.
far as like making sure I'm not gonna like throw away everything, right? And like have nothing. It's never like that. But you know, I've taken a lot of risk with all of this. And plenty of things haven't worked out, you know, and but what's nice about this strategy is that you have so many layers of protection that, you know, like you can do $100,000 invest, you know, depending on what you're, you know, where you are, what
Sure.
flip sizes you're doing, like that. But like you can do an investment, lose that money, and still be okay. You know, your things, it's different than like, all right, it took me 3 years to save up this money and I'm going to put it all into this one investment and you lose it. Like that's what's devastating. And I think that's what people think about when they think about investing, because they're investing usually with their own money. They're not thinking about using leverage, things like that. And the amount that you're investing is based off of your monthly cash flow, things like that, and being able to pay it off in a very short amount of time. So yeah, I lose that money. It's happened, and have moved on, you know, after a couple of months. So it's, which I think is like, I don't know, it gives you like this whole like level of freedom a little bit to just be like, all right, like I'm just like, I'm open to this, I'm open to these different things. And I feel like that's when you'll find investments that are maybe more risky, but that have like a big payout, you know. But, you know, you have to be okay losing money, you know, and you have to be, then that's why you should never invest with money that you can't afford to lose. Like that rule is still across the board, regardless of like what strategy you're doing.
Or how much money you
You know,
make.
right. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like across the board, like don't invest money that you can't afford to lose. So, you know.
And I always see Nino with his when he's not traveling, with his background with the bricks, and that always just reminds me of that protection piece. It's like playing Jenga, right? You can lose one bar once you have it stacked up. You can tap out one bar, and then the whole thing is not gonna collapse. Of course, if all the bars are falling off, yes, that is true. That's gonna fall apart. But if you lay your bricks well and have them interlocking,
Yeah.
that's
Well,
We're
it
good.
all stands on a good foundation of IBC.
that's right.
That's the beauty of it all. Is if you have if you have IBC running your foundation, you can mitigate your losses even more. I think my takeaway from it, and I've mentioned this before, I think a while ago on a podcast, about the value of a dollar, right? It's a dollar at the end of the day is still a dollar. So if you can go out there, Lindsay mentioned it, you know, $100,000 investment. Some people, that's like, dude, that takes me 10 years to save that up. What do you mean just throwing 100K in an investment, right? But it just goes to show, if you can create more active income, you have then more money to invest. So simple example, if you make $500,000 a year and you save, if you only spend on your expenses 150,000, let's say, or 200,000, you have 300K that 1 year that you can invest. And like Lindsay said, you can throw 100K at an investment. If you throw it into a typical stack, an amortized note, that's going to bring you $3,000 a month. $3,000 a month. For some people, for most people, that's their mortgage. On one stack of note, you can cover your mortgage, right? Now think about it. If you could only put 10,000 in, well, now you got to take off another zero. Now that's only $300. But see, the investment is the investment, and it's going to pay whatever it's going to pay. But $300 versus $3,000 is a huge difference in terms of economic value of that same investment. That's why I think it's so important that, I mean, one of my takeaways is if you can make more active income, it allows you to take bigger risks, but those bigger risks could have bigger rewards, right? Bigger risk, bigger reward. And that could truly be life-changing when you get, I mean, I can speak from experience here, some of the investments that we've all done that have not paid, but then some that have really, really paid have done really, really well. But it was because of the volume that we were able to put into but you have to, the biggest takeaway with this is you have to have the maturity and the strategy to know when to stop. Otherwise, you're just gambling. At that point, if you go out, you put 100,000 into an investment, it pays you 150, and beforehand you told yourself, I'm going to take that 50K and that's going to be enough for me. But then somebody comes around and says, hey, give me your 150, I'll double it. Now you're just being greedy. See, that's the difference, is you have to be, and ultimately it does take time, but you have to be mature enough to understand and have a plan for what you're going to do with that money. Otherwise, you could potentially lose it all. So I like to caveat that because it is very important as that's why I think for some people it's actually good that they can only invest like 10,000 at a time, because it forces them to learn. It forces them to learn as they go up in increments, 10, 15,000, 25,000, so on and so forth, that by the time they get to 100, though, they've learned and they've mastered that strategy, versus someone like the three of us where we just kind of dove right into it and we've lost hundreds of thousands of dollars between the three of us, based on jumping into a pool with no water. But lessons learned, and that's why we're here to be able to share this. So I think the way you explained is very good, Lindsay. So thank you.
Yeah. No, I mean, I just to like piggyback off of that, like, yeah, like the more money you make, the bigger flips you're doing, the higher your cash flow, the easier it is for you to, maybe pay off certain debts that further increase your cash flow. I think you guys have talked about whether it's, when you're using money to do an investment versus pay off a debt, and which is going to provide you with more cash flow, right? And that's like, it depends on certain things. And, because of like the volume of money that I was able to put into this, which, it wasn't just my income, right? I said, I liquidated 401ks. I took out, a BHG loan. I looked for stagnant cash everywhere.
You found money. You just found money everywhere.
Money. Literally anywhere that I could find it, I found it. And so in doing that, at my 1-year review, I was told that like I had created the most cash flow in a year than any, member of this community. So it was like, I was like, all right, cool. Like, this is how you do it. And sorry, there was one more thing I was going to say, but either way, like you said, so I started with $30,000 flips, and within a year I was within 9 months, I had surpassed my W-2 income with cash flow within 9 months. And then within the year, I was doing, $130,000 flips. So I really accelerated everything within the first year. But again, it came with like understanding the strategy, not investing money that I couldn't afford to lose, and really just like finding money anywhere I could find it.
See, this is why we have Lindsay in our circle, because it makes us better. I mean, I remember that. I'm like, no, she didn't beat my number. No, no, but it's
okay, right.
I'm kidding. It's healthy competition. It's like it's getting into, because you're doing this. You don't want to do it alone. You want to do it with friends. You want to do it with people. I mean, I met Lindsay the first time, it was a couple of years ago now, actually a year ago now, at a conference for high income earners for an investment that we were all involved in. So it just goes to show, and it's nice to have that healthy competition, because it's, at the end of the day, you got to make it fun. It is a game, but we've talked about joking things here. We've talked about serious things. And I think ultimately, if your head's in the right place, as in like, what like Lindsay's is when it comes to, your why, everything else becomes fun. You make light of it. You try to enjoy it. I think we all have, the three of us, really evolved from when we first started talking to each other. I know starting off, it was the three of us. It's like any investment. It's like, hey, you want to put some money in this? Yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
We still do that.
We still do to an extent, but not as aggressive, not as crazy as we used to. Because I definitely think we've learned a lot. So, and I hope everybody's learned a lot from this show as well. I think we've had guests on and we've talked about the people, the average income earner, and I think that's more relatable, right? When you look at a bell curve, we talk more under the big shape of the bell curve. But there are people like Lindsay out there who we can't neglect them. They're high income earners, and oftentimes they want to learn more. They have a desire for more. But like Lindsay experienced, oftentimes like, well, you make enough money, you can figure it out on your own. Like, unfortunately, people don't view them as like, it's almost like rich people problems. Yeah, you can figure it out on your own. We're going to focus on these people because they're quote unquote more important. So I definitely think for people out there that are listening who maybe are high income earners, or maybe you're young and your parents are high income earners, I think just understand that the strategy works first and foremost across all income brackets, and different, I don't want to say more money, more problems, but at different income brackets, there are different problems and different issues to address. It's not perfect at the top, if you will, of making X amount of money. There's still problems, as you heard Lindsay express, and things that she's had to share. So, Pei, anything you want to wrap up with?
I think just also add that piece, I think a lot of times when we talk about investment, most people are just like, oh, what about the tax? And what about the tax?
Mhm.
Don't get me
So
started, Faye.
I know.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, right. I mean, high income earners, right? It's they pay, the more money you earn, the more money you pay in taxes. And there are so many alternative investments that you can do that can help with your taxes. But you know, again, that group isn't willing to take those chances. So they just use, you know, their 401k and whatever else to try to lower their tax burden. But again, like that, and that just going this route, it's amazing what you learn. Like when you think that you know something else can lead you to something else. And so like tax strategy was something I never even thought about and wouldn't know anything about if unless I had gone down this path. So yeah, I mean, there's just so much to this, and it's like you just keep learning and learning and learning, and you know, but it's great. It's really exciting.
Yeah. Well, thank you for coming on and sharing sharing your story, sharing your insights. I definitely think that people will take away a lot, because I think it's a different perspective from what we've had on, and I think it's also real, it's also raw, and it's also inspirational. It gives people a chance to see what life could look like, you know, if they're consistent with it, or if maybe they decide to change careers or get started. So I definitely appreciate it. Pay, as always, appreciate your insights and your wisdom. Pay's wisdom.
We can't wait to have Lindsay come back more into the
I know.
community. She's so busy with the house building right now.
I know. Oh my gosh, I know. I've been like so MIA, but you know, I'm back a little bit.
Yeah.
But thank you guys so much for having me. I'm really honored and like happy to talk about this stuff. And you know, you guys are, you know, you already know, you know, I love you guys. So
Appreciate it, Lindsay. Thank you so much, and thank you everybody for tuning in. Stay tuned for the next episode. Take care, everybody.